Welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast with KOMO Sports Director Niko Tamurian and Najee Moye.
Well, welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast. I'm Niko Tamurian, and you notice Najee and I, we have 3 cameras here for those of you watching on YouTube. That's because my brother, mentor, and our overall was not so bad. Mike Ferrari is what's going on.
Hey, it's good to be back.
The most illustrious guest we've had so far, I want to say. An actual KOMO legend, a walking, living KOMO legend. How about that?
So you guys haven't had any guests?
No, we've had plenty of guests, but
Really, we've had a couple, I guess.
We've had one other guest on this great podcast, but you are the most illustrious because you are the man who, along with Niko, there's pictures of Niko on the wall. There's also pictures of you on the wall.
Right.
Almost like a wall of fame.
I spent a decade in this room. I mean, off and on. I went home in between. But yeah, pretty much.
We let you leave every now and then.
It's the epicenter of KOMO Sports right here.
It is a beautiful view of the Space Needle, a little bit of a sneak peek of Elliott Bay, and where the magic happens, if you want to call it that. Mike, you're a busy man these days, so thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good to be here.
What have you been up to lately?
Well, I'm doing the real estate thing with Windermere, and it's a traditional long-standing company here in Seattle, and it's been quite the ride. And so you really get a feel for what people are going through with the economy and trying to get people in houses, and just I love helping people and serving others, and it's part of the job, and it's been a really enjoyable ride. But I certainly miss all the folks here at KOMO TV.
Well, we're happy. And full disclosure, you helped us, my wife and I, buy a house last year.
That was great. We got lucky, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Great house. We're still waiting on the home party, the home.
Oh, we can do that anytime.
Oh, the housewarming
party. The name just escaped me.
A year later, we should.
Well, we might as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, well, Mike, it is a thrill to have you here, obviously. And listen, so you and I are always in touch. We're always touching base as much as we can. But I have to admit to you, so we did so many, Najee and I, this show, just talking about how much transition there's been in Seattle sports. And I often thought about you from the standpoint that you spend so much time covering these teams in this office, as you mentioned. Have you even taken a second to think about, like, oh my God, like all these coaches, all these players, all these, Seattle sports stalwarts are all gone. Just what's your
reaction? It's kind of bizarre. So I don't look at you. We're looking at cameras here.
Yeah, we're
doing like a TV. Well,
when I look at you, I look at
right. Right. I just want to make sure I'm facing the right direction.
I noticed that.
I was like, Niko, why won't you look at me when you're talking?
Look into the soul of our viewers, guys.
A lot of things certainly really stand out. I think the biggest was the Mariners going to the playoffs. That happened after I left. Everything that's going on with UW to make it not look like a top tier program, from what's going on with the basketball, to Jen Cohen leaving, to what Kalen DeBoer did. And that's no slight on UW, just basically that obviously I would pick UW to be a destination job for all those positions. But, when you have an AD barely here to move furniture into a house, that begins to bring some things into question. Hockey has been awesome. I never was here for an actual game, but I've been able to go to a lot of Kraken games. So that's been terrific. And, of course, Pete Carroll leaving, which was crazy. And that whole regime is now it's full of young, capable coaches. Not that not capable, just right. It's going to be a whole new feel of thing. I love Pete Carroll. I love covering him. There was nothing but awesome times around Pete Carroll. I went to the Super Bowl twice with him, so it was cool.
That was great. Yeah, it's actually the Seahawks just had a press conference where they were, Gino said it was just a terrible day. Pete Carroll was on the sport, but all you can do is, look at what they have. And Flores, we talked at length about Mike McDonald, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen because every hire looks on paper until they actually coach a game and whatnot. But it's just been a crazy transition, and now it's just we kind of going through here. I mean, Mike's saying all that stuff. I know we've lived it, but I'm like, oh my God, that's all happened in 2.5 years or so.
It's completely crazy because I kind of almost just kind of got to KOMO, and I think Mike and I had about maybe 6 months of working with each other, maybe a little bit less. Mm-hmm. And then even just since Mike left, and just since where we are now, I mean, things have gone completely upside down. Even just talking about, if you even just focus on college football itself, or even just like the state of college sports. I mean, Mike, when you were here for about 4 years ago, I mean, you'd have Pac-12, consistent, and just almost you can kind of think about everything that's happened at UW is almost definitely directly tied to what college sports is now, right? I mean, just like how bonkers it's been.
It's bonkers, and I think of a lot of different stories, but the Proctor kid. I'm going to talk about my own school for a minute, but just the essence of how crazy the NIL is.
Yeah,
Caden Proctor leaves Alabama. I don't know if you guys have talked a bit about this, but signs with Iowa, goes back to the school he committed to originally out of high school. I was glad to have him. He's meeting Caitlin Clark. They're getting him to the games. Okay, this kid's going to be a future left tackle in the NFL. He's on the Hawkeyes. Goes to vacation with all of his former Alabama teammates for spring break. Comes back the night before spring practice begins, and he tells Kirk Ferentz he's going to be transferring back to Alabama. And beyond the craziness of that, the money that was spent to him is like, aren't these student athletes? My whole thought was like, so does Caden Proctor finish up a semester at Iowa, but Alabama's going to want him on the field for spring practice? Does he take like a half a class, or are they doing like racquetball at Alabama and he can just jump in? Like I was thoroughly confused and disappointed, but it's crazy. And then you saw the coach, I forgot his name, at Boston College, that left. Right, to be the coordinator of the Packers. And Scott Van Pelt talked about it. You're not just recruiting a kid to go once and sign and be there. You're re-recruiting these kids year after year so they don't take a fatter paycheck somewhere else. So the essence, I loved covering college sports when I was here. I don't think I'd enjoy it as much now.
Really?
Simple enough.
No, I agree with that. Just from covering it now. And like you bring up such a great point about that is that, listen, I have no problem with a kid getting some kind of pay or whatever like that, but there's got to be regulation on it, right? This idea that you can do, what you just mentioned, I'm going to go from Alabama to Iowa, back to Alabama, and there's been all sorts of other stories, and now you got, to go to like the conference level on a different thing. You got Stanford and Cal on the Pacific Coast playing in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Like it's just, it's just a crazy world, and I feel like that it's all really maybe just this, this instant gratification type world we live in right now. I just feel like it's really just hit a fever pitch. Everything happens so much more rapidly. I mean, you get Kalen DeBoer coaching in the championship on a Monday. He's Alabama's head coach by that Friday. Mm-hmm. That was
nuts.
That was a crazy week. That was a crazy week.
And I remember thinking, like, Kalen DeBoer could be a Don James type thing. Like, he seemed like he really loved it here. I'm not saying that he didn't, but lo and behold, there he is a few days later and he's at Alabama. So, you may have just answered this question, Mike. I was just going to say, how much different things are. So I'll pivot to something else here. Obviously, when I think about the great things you've been able to cover, the Super Bowl is going to be one of the first things that comes up, and it probably is. But if it's not the answer, what's the most memorable, fun thing you cover? And if it is the Super Bowl, what's something else low key that was like that really stands out in your career? Like, you know what, you wouldn't think it, but I really enjoyed this story, this event, whatever it might be.
Well, Super Bowls were top notch. There was nothing like the NFC Championship game win with the tip and the chaos that ensued in this town for that 2-week stretch. I mean, it was crazy. All the way up to the Super Bowl parade after. That was the complete package. I mean, that was I'm lucky to be here type of component. The best stories I ever did is that, I love all those fringe sports, the things that people, that aren't the stick and ball sports, that aren't the things you see all the time. And, when you have the NBA and there's always that half hour, which there's always like Eric will do a hero special now, or they fill that in because you don't get the network programming. So they're always asking you. And the news director at the time, Holly Gaunt, asked me to do something. I was like, well, let's do something like on Crazy Sports. And so like there was a component of time where I think I did the paragliding twice. I climbed the Smith Tower or went down it. I raced tractors out on the peninsula in Port Gamble. We did this whole thing for a show. And they're crazy out there. What they do, they're lawn tractors that are souped up. And we had a photographer, Damien Glitch. You know Damien?
I know Damien.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Damien decided he wanted to take a spin on the tractor, and he goes flying around this track, and he lost control. And the tractor, he ended up underneath the tractor. On the tractor, there's this pile of dust, and the tractor's flipped over. And I'm like, oh my God, Damien's dead. I was like, I'm going to get fired.
Oh, God.
Damien, what is going on? He gets up. I'm okay. It's okay.
Goodness.
Back from the peninsula that night. So it was putting all those together, but I ended up with a bit of a problem after. I had that adrenaline thing that people talk about. Like I wanted more. Like I wanted to go paragliding again by myself. And I told my wife that, and she goes, "You can do what you want. Just please go ahead and increase the insurance policy." and that little phrase I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy. I might die. So I let's simmer down and stuff. So those sports, that was kind of the most fun I've ever had, just kind of putting something together.
I'm listening to these are great stories, Mike. And I don't know if I've even asked you or Niko this question. What is your favorite sport?
I think I know Mike's, but I'm gonna let him answer.
No, you go ahead.
I don't know that I. Okay, so I don't look it because I'm like 5'9" on a good day. But I played basketball through my senior year, so that was always a special spot. Well, he had handles. I was a 5'9" shooting guard.
Isaiah Thomas.
There you go.
Hey,
doing great with the Suns right now.
There you go.
Without the legal baggage.
Yes.
I was a 5'9" shooting guard who couldn't shoot.
Okay.
Actually,
just a guard.
Until my senior year,
defensive specialist.
Yes. Well, I did play deep. Up until through my junior year, I was about 40 pounds heavier even than what I am now as an adult. And then I lost a bunch of weight. But I was always because I was heavier, I was just like 5'9" forward, which was just not good. But then I lost weight, got in shape. Or you play guard now, but like I didn't have handles. I could barely shoot. Like it was so I was just a defensive guy. But so basketball was at that soft spot, but there's nothing quite like. It's hard to say. I don't know if I have a favorite because you think of it now through the coverage lens. There's nothing quite like the adrenaline of a football stadium when like 70,000 people at Husky Stadium are erupting or Lumen or whatever it is. Like in Oregon, just that last second field goal in October last year, really raid Husky Stadium. That was really cool. But I also, and I've said this often, with baseball season now underway, that for me, whether it's relaxing or fun, whatever it is, there's nothing also quite like. Even just being there for a random game in April or May, just being on the field at T-Mobile Park and being like, I'm on a Major League Baseball field. Like it's one of those you talk about. You're lucky to have this job.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I'm pretty lucky to be here today. So I don't know that I have one favorite. I kind of just get caught up in the seasons and the moment, sort of thing, if that makes sense.
I hear you.
Yeah, one flows into the other. Mine has always been baseball. Was that what you were going to say?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So. Just grew up watching Pirates and Mets games with my grandpa, who was from Pennsylvania. Grew up on Willie Stargell and Dave Parker, and then the '86 Mets, watching them, and they beat the Red Sox. And then I ended up going to Red Sox games after my grandpa died, and then really got into going to Fenway and those teams, and became a big Red Sox fan. I never really had a team growing up in Connecticut, as I did what my grandfather did. But baseball to me is probably the best. But you're right; it's a very seasonal component to this job, and you're watching sports every night. However, you're not watching the NBA anymore. I just don't care.
Oh,
no defense.
No defense.
I don't know who the guys are.
No,
that's
a bigger question.
That's true.
Discussion for women's basketball, though.
Mike, let's talk baseball for a second. Our topic of discussion is going to be 3 weeks out from the NFL draft, but I've had a bone to pick with some emails I've gotten and some folks on social media that are just down and out about the Mariners on April whatever, and it's like 12 or whatever games into the season. Which are
you not a Mariners fan? Do you not understand?
This is like it's like standard operating procedure for Mariners fans at this point.
I'm like, guys, it's April. We have like 95% of the season left. Yeah. I'm not saying like don't root for your team every day. I'm not saying don't be upset. That's what fans do. Like, but this notion like, they got to fire service tomorrow. It's ludicrous. You want to tell everybody to calm down?
Just calm down. That's the point and click nature of our entire society.
Yeah.
The Mariners are 2 games out of first place in the West. The Astros are last. They just finished up a road trip with a win. They'll come home, take on the Cubs in Cincinnati. Lighten up. It's April, for God's sakes. They play 162 games. Fire Scott Service. So then you're going to go ahead and fire a pitching coach. What are you going to do? Put an interim manager in there? What's going to happen to Jerry DePoto? They are connected, whether they like it or not. But those 2 guys go hand in hand. Who's that? What is it? Perry?
Perry? Oh, Bone, yeah.
No, the infield coach.
Oh yeah, Perry. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Everybody's wondering about their errors. Is it his fault? Should we fire him?
Right.
Lighten up. The thing I don't understand. Why does this guy show up in February? They do have 6 months, 6 weeks to get ready. So you'd expect them to be a little sharper. And the Yankees. Well, no, it's just the Yankees are always sharp. Right? And they end up losing. See what happens. But yeah, just like
yeah. Well, you mentioned the Yankees just now, and honestly, I think the teams like the Yankees and Dodgers and even Red Sox to some level and Mets are kind of almost to blame as to why Mariners fans are just kind of so like, oh, why not us? We didn't get Ohtani, or we didn't get any big major free agents in the offseason. And, they see, Judge, Stanton, Soto hitting home runs, Ohtani hitting home runs. Like, where's that, coming from here in Seattle? And it's like, I get it. But at the same time, you're going to be stressed after every game, every game this year, just thinking, just like, what's going on? What's going on? Perfect example today. We're watching the Blue Jays game in the newsroom, and it's 7th inning, and the Mariners up 1-0, and then Vlad hits a home run to tie it up in the 7th, and it was like a balloon had just been like all the air had been left out the balloon, even in the newsroom amongst the Mariners fans, and it's like, okay, is this the only run we're going to get? Is that the only run we're going to get? I'm like, just relax. Yeah, just relax. You're going to be stressed a lot of this year because baseball is inherently a stressful sport, and it's a streaky sport, and it's almost a lucky sport too. It's more lucky than good, honestly, I feel like. But yeah, everyone, like Mike said, just relax.
Yeah, I got an email that you appreciate this, Mike.
I always appreciate the viewer email.
Somebody said accused me of being on John Stanton's payroll because I told them it was 11 games into the season that we don't know anything about this team yet. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wish I was John Stanton's payroll.
he probably wouldn't be here talking to us right now if he was, honestly.
Yeah, I think it goes without saying. Listen, if you're a Mariners fan that maybe you want to be upset about spending, or what you can. I'm not trying to say don't be a fan. I'm not trying to say mute your emotions completely. I'm just saying don't panic.
Like we've got so much. No. You know what Niehaus always said, Dave Niehaus?
What?
Always said, take a good hard look at your team, where they stand in the standings on Father's Day. Get to Father's Day. That's your midpoint of the season where they should be hitting their stride. That is a really strong indication a month before the All-Star break how that team is going back.
So what do you see coming from the Mariners this year?
Well, Cal Raleigh keeps hitting the ball. Maybe they should play every game in Toronto.
Yeah, I know.
He has hit 9 home runs in 15 games in Toronto.
Huge.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I think with his leadership, you see a bunch of guys that are coming together. Is Ty France back after the paternity leave?
Yeah, he had a big double.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get to watch the whole game today, so thanks for letting me know that. I think he could be a big part, but it is these young pitchers. You can't have Kirby going out and having 27-minute innings and things like that, but that's early. So the nice thing is they're young. They don't have too many big problems, and they can be corrected. You're not telling, a 48-year-old Jamie Moyer how to pitch again. You're teaching these kids to get better. So, I mean, that is the strength of this team is their starting rotation. Castillo's going to come around. That's okay. It just takes some time. And those guys, it's so fickle. Back with Sandy Koufax, I think when he retired, I think he had like 20 games in his final season, didn't he? At like age 48 or something.
He pitched a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I remember when Eric Bedard asked to come out of a game after 4 1/3 innings when he had come here. He was one of the shortest tenured pitchers as far as innings went. And then that's kind of the standard. These guys have to get up and get into their rhythm, and they'll pull them. They had the big thing about Miller getting pulled after 78 pitches. So that's going to happen early on because they're protecting your pitching staff. These guys are worn out half the time before they even get drafted. So they basically have to take care of them the whole time. But I don't know. I mean, they could end up in a wild card situation again. We'll see.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, wild card situation. But
Niko, you said 93 games before.
I said 92 games.
92 games before.
Which, I don't know that wins the West, though. I honestly don't know if that wins the West. Yeah. But I looked at that roster before opening day, and there was upgrades. I wouldn't say there were splash upgrades, but okay, your opening day DH isn't Tommy LaStella. It's Mitch Garver, who can hit. He I just saw some of those things where I know he hasn't hit very well yet. He had a great catch in the 9th inning today, but Jorge Polanco is an upgrade from Caballero or, Colton Wong. So I saw those things and I'm like, okay, 4 to 6 wins better than last year. So that same rotation intact sounds reasonable. And I still think it's there. That's the point is that, it's so early that I think it's too soon to draw any conclusions, except for general things like Mike telling, what you said a minute ago, the general trends and things like that you can notice with this team. So we're going to see. Mike, we're going to be on around Father's Day again, okay?
Yeah.
Then we're going to circle back. Yeah.
And the big thing is really, if you're in position, standing-wise, and you're playing decent baseball, by that All-Star break, that's when you really start thinking, is Jerry going to do? But if you're too far out, then, he's just going to try to get prospects in positions for the draft and things like that. So that's the most crucial month, really, Father's Day until July. mid July to also break.
A little Father's Day gift from the Mariners.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Right.
Yeah, I'll take it.
So speaking of GMs who make a lot of moves, Mike, you cover a lot of Seahawks drafts, and you know why they call John Schneider Trader John.
Trader John, yeah.
Full disclosure, I've covered 2 drafts. This will be my 3rd, and they were basically exciting because it was post Russell Wilson stuff, right? Yep. It was they got back in the first round and took Charles Cross and got that extra pick in the second round and picked Kenneth Walker and Moye. Then this past year, it was exciting because of that same trade because I had the 2 first rounders. Now it's like, okay, you're sitting at number 16. You don't have a second round pick because you traded that for Leonard Williams. And so the question becomes to me, okay, you can stand pat and take somebody at 16, and help up front or whatever, or you can be Trader John and try to get back in that second round, like maybe trade that 16th pick for a lower first round selection and second round pick. I'm not asking a specific, hey, what do you think? Like I'm saying, from the feel of it, from covering John Schneider all those years and all those drafts, does that feel like the situation he kind of makes a trade in?
Absolutely. 100%. The funny thing about John Schneider was like, you would always have all the draft prognosticators. Seahawks sitting at 16. They're going to take Jimmy Snodgrass out of Vanderbilt, the great linebacker. This is the best fit for them.
It's a great name for a linebacker, too. That's a great name. That's a great name.
Then all of a sudden, it's like, hey, here's the Seahawks pick. They're picking Ike Whitaker, a punter out of Southern S&M University or something like that, A&M, whatever. And so S&M. Anyways, yeah.
SMU maybe?
SMU. Yeah, okay, let's just delete that.
Yeah.
So anyways, like he's not a person that really relishes that first round pick. You know what I mean? He considers those picks. I always used to joke about Gollum. Remember that precious that little rock, that guy? That's how he looks at his picks. And so if he can get more precious, that's what he's going to do. So if they stand at 16 and draft there, I'd be really surprised. I think he actually moves it further down, gets a second and a third, and high in the second and in the third. But it depends on what the teams do. Ahead of him.
What's your take on that, Nash?
Well, no, I mean, I can see that definitely. I think it's like Mike said, it's very dependent on what teams ahead of them do as far as like quarterback. But that being said, I mean, we look at the Seahawks' needs, though. They have a quarterback. I've been talking on this podcast for a long time about Michael Penix and how cool it would be if the Hawks ended up with him. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, though, is my thing. I mean, Niko and I talked about this earlier. I think Mike McDonald may want and John Schneider may want to go with more of a safe pick as far as, lines, offensive, defensive. The game is won in the actual trenches after all. But that being said, Mike said, more is better. And 16 is a weird place.
It is.
It's a weird place, especially for a team that was trying to make the playoffs the year before. Very on the fringe, on the wild card. We saw them get killed in the wild card game 2 years ago against the Niners. We don't want to see that again. I don't know. What who do you think they're kind of like? What position group are you thinking maybe in the second? Like you're thinking linebackers. You mentioned the guy Snodgrass. He sounds great. By the
way. I'll say this: I think that when you get those precious picks, as Mike called them, and they are, I think it allows you to maybe take other swings. For example, I think that the only reason they take Kenneth Walker in the second round back in 22 is because they had 2 second-round picks, so they addressed the need on defense with Moye and Mafe. And said, okay, well, now we can have fun, so to speak, right? Same deal last year. They did the same exact thing. They took a linebacker and Derek Hall because they were able to do that. And then they took Zach Charbonnet, right? Basically used your second-round pick on a second running back. And so, that's what I think those more picks do. I saw an interesting – I'm going to ask you guys about mock drafts in a minute here because I have a take on those. I saw a mock draft earlier that's, theorized anyway that maybe the Philadelphia Eagles, who are picking at 22 – would trade 22 and then their second round pick, which is something like 50, to the Seahawks for 16. And I'm like, that sounds like gold to John Schneider. Move down just a few in the first round, then get that second. But anyway, here's a theory I've had about mock drafts. First of all, I think they're crap. But second of all, this is for both of you. Do you think somebody like a John Schneider, and I get he's like the busiest man ever. Do you think
he's not busy though?
Well, sure. Do you think somebody like John Schneider, like, I don't know, buddy, like texts him a mock draft, like, hey, look at this. And he just happens to come across one in his like Google suggested articles. And he's like, That's the dumbest crap I've ever heard. Do you think that happens? And like, I meant to ask him after last year's draft, and we got the old wrap up at the end of the press conference. I'm going to ask this year. Do you think John Schneider just has like a huge chuckle at like 90% of mock drafts that may come across his phone, if they come across his phone?
I think they all do.
Yeah, 100%.
All the GMs.
so.
I think they probably share that like in a private message group and just joke about what people are saying because they know what they need. I think a guy like Schneider at 16, he might have his golden egg, that player that's on the board that he could not pass up. And that's going to be pretty minimal. And that person's probably gone in the top 10. But if some of those players are still sitting there, that's going to dictate his move.
Yeah.
But as far as the draft chatter, I mean, there are people that basically make their living on possibilities that might happen and just grabbing numbers out of the air. And this guy's going, how much of it's actually accurate besides the number one pick?
Almost none of it.
Right? Almost none of it.
You guys, Najee, we talked about this. Remember that 2022 draft and everybody's saying like 4 or 5 quarterbacks were going to be taken in the first round, including like Malik Willis, who eventually went in 4th round. Desmond Ridder was supposed to go first round. I think he was 4th or 5th round even maybe. And like, but every mock leading up to it had all these quarterbacks taken in the first round. It's like they're so. It's unbelievable how wrong some of these things are.
And neither of those guys are starting.
No, Pickett was the only starter. Now he's not, of course.
And he's not. So it's kind of a crapshoot, honestly. All these mock drafts.
I will update you guys on what John Schneider has to say.
But what I will say, though, to your point, Niko, you mentioned that, do you think all these guys are sitting in a group chat, kind of sharing mock drafts and like in a giant group chat? There's one guy. There's probably one GM out of 32 that's probably like, well,
right. Yeah.
Come
to think of it.
Yeah. There's really like, this is not a bad idea, taking Snodgrass number 1 overall.
Snodgrass is going to be good. Have you had the pre-draft John Schneider press conference?
Not yet.
Well, there's like 16 hours of my life I won't get back because there's absolutely nothing said.
He can't. Well,
he is all politician the whole time. Like, and the funny thing is, I credit the beat guys. Oh, John, what do you think you're going to do? You just pick. He just goes around, big circle. And okay, there goes 5 minutes of my life. Yeah. So, I mean, why do they even do that? John Schneider has this statement about the draft. I don't know what I'm doing yet. I hope you all have a good day. We'll see you when you cover it. We'll talk about our picks then.
Yeah.
I just summed it up. I just did the job for Dave Pearson.
There you go.
Hi, Dave.
Well, and I think a lot of people don't realize, I think that, though they have plans, but there's like 8 plans based on what happens in front of them. Like, I don't think they truly know until it comes. And you've been in that, the room next to the war room at VMAC, Mike. You hear that. You see what seemed like a random, Atlanta Falcons pick, and all of a sudden the Seahawks war room was like going bonkers. It's like,
right.
Yeah, because it means they didn't take their guy. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's genuinely a mystery even to those folks. I think that's, certainly why fans enjoy the draft to a certain respect. Like, it's kind of like Christmas morning, you see whatever. But, gosh, I feel like I'm complaining a lot. Fans of the Mariners.
They always move.
Oh, by the way, speaking of the Jets, we're for next week's show, we have a
no one has ever spoken about the Jets, first of all.
I forgot you guys are Giants and Jets, by the way.
You're in Jets green.
Oh, I forgot Mike is a Jets fan. God,
I am a Jets fan.
It's weird.
I was going to say, speaking of the Jets, we have their former GM, Mike Tannenbaum, doing a Zoom. We'll bring you that in next week's show.
Tell him thanks for screwing up the team.
Wow.
I would be sure to say. I won't.
Verbatim.
It's kind of like the Chris Alford effect.
Okay.
Or Steve Alford. Right?
Steve Alford, yeah.
He went to Iowa and just basically ruined that basketball program for years to come after he left him in New Mexico. Mike Tannenbaum basically ruined the Jets. And we're still digging out of the Tannenbaum hole.
And now he's at ESPN.
How long ago was that, though?
Like, all I know is it lasted an eternity.
Forever. It's still going on forever.
Was it 6-7 years ago?
Was he the GM that traded for Tebow and all that?
Yeah, he was that guy.
Because I covered those training camps.
Rex.
The Tebow,
Rex.
Tebow and Mark Sanchez training camps. I covered those.
Yep.
They were entertaining.
I've never been so happy to be a Giants fan until around that time. I mean, I'm always happy to be a Giants fan, but just you look over in the 4 Jets fans that I know, now 5 now because I didn't know Mike was one until now.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, sorry, guys.
It's okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Good uniforms, though. And things are looking up. Yeah.
Well, hey, we're all looking up because we've got baseball season. We're sad about the Kraken season wrapping up. But we have baseball season, which is going to be this marathon, as we said, for the next few months. NFL draft season, which I don't think you realize until you start covering an NFL team, is really the beginning of the season because there's OTAs after, then there's mini camp, and then there's all these things that before you know it, I mean, basically there's something every couple of weeks with the teams until you get to actual training camp. So it's I almost look at it like, okay, draft's here, football season's here, essentially. And let's see how this all shakes out, man. Mike Ferreri, my brother.
Are we done?
I think we're wrapping up.
We're wrapping up.
We got to talk about women's basketball.
You know what? We do. Because I'm going to let you take away, Mike. Because, we all know how awesome it was, but you're an Iowa fan.
No, and for good reason. So I was in a meeting, my office meeting on Monday, and guess Monday at 10 o'clock, they had pre-sale for the Seattle Storm.
Yeah.
So being an Iowa fan, I went out. I'm out of town when the Storm, the Indiana Fever come to town the first time. So their second game in town is on June 27th. When in your right mind could you not get pre-sale tickets for the Indiana Fever coming to town to play the Storm? They were done.
Wow.
I have to go into the general admission now whenever that comes out, like in 2 weeks, because of the Caitlin Clark effect.
They're already gone.
They're already gone. The pre-sale. So then they have the general admission stuff coming out.
That's incredible.
That's what it's done.
It's incredible.
It's so rare to see. It's not even just see any player in basketball just invigorate a program a whole entire year, a sport. Honestly, like since Caitlin Clark, like I have watched so many of her games just this year. I watched the final, the last 3 games actually, and I didn't watch one of the men's games, and I was captivated from the beginning to end. Honestly, I mean she's you can tell she's spicy. She's got a bit of an attitude, which is great.
Yeah, she's good. But you know what's interesting? I was thinking about this, and I'll be brief because I know
we're good. We got time.
No. So the thing is, I loved men's college basketball growing up, and it was because the players stayed at their schools for a while. Danny Ferreri in his last game at Duke, the entire student section, when they introduced Danny Ferreri's parents, they chanted "one more kid." They did things like that. It was Corey Maggette that actually left Duke, drafted by the Sonics in 1999, one of the first players to leave Duke early. So you followed these guys year after year, and you got behind them, and whether it was across the country or in your hometown, whoever it was, you picked those teams, and you followed it, and you loved college basketball. Well, now I watched – something came on the other night, Spurs and Sixers. I knew Max. That was it. That was the only player. I was like, who are these other guys?
Yeah.
Well, it's because they're some of these kids have gone to UW. They're barely there long enough to put their futon together. I mean, Mike Hopkins is a product of this system that doesn't have players staying any longer. And other coaches were kind of, having the same situation. But why do we like Caitlin Clark? Caitlin came to Seattle last year. A bunch of people got behind her. Guess what? We're not going to be able to see her in person. We can watch her on TV.
Yeah.
And this game is great. Look at her shoot from half court and make it. I mean, it's crazy. And so the women's game is going to continue to prosper. And it goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. College sports as a whole, the NIL, transfers, all the stuff that's going on, it's got problems.
And I hope that, the Caitlin Clark effect translates to the WNBA. Mm-hmm. Like, I really do.
I already did it for Storm tickets.
Yeah, well, apparently, yeah.
You guys are right. I mean, it's and Mike, I think that's actually something I hadn't really thought about too deeply. I thought about what it's done for the women's game and just how exciting the product is, especially Caitlin Clark going against an undefeated South Carolina team that was so darn good too. Mm-hmm. And even on the road for Iowa, playing against, UConn with Paige Beckers and things like that. But it's also, you're right, these players are there for 4 years. Caitlin maybe kind of flirted with leaving a year early last year, but stayed because of the NIL and the opportunity, chance to win a championship. I think that's a trend that you see more and more of. And you mentioned her playing here last year. I love that, in the little interview sessions they do, she was really, I was asking her about playing at Climate Pledge, Sue Bird's court. It was just a couple months after Sue had retired. And she just, oh my God, I grew up watching Sue. She's a real student of the game, real respect. And certainly we've heard Sue say great things. And I know you agree with this, Mike. Sue Bird's just one of the best people ever. So,
ever. Yeah.
Oh, one of my favorite. And certainly so.
A fellow New Yorker.
Yeah, New York, you're right. Mm-hmm. And so, gosh, I do miss watching. Storm's going to be pretty good this year. I like having Nneka Ogwumike and Skylar Diggins-Smith and, of course, Drew Lloyd. But miss Sue. Yeah, but she's always around the program.
Yes.
Guys, we have to do this more often.
This has been fun.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't know why I sounded so unsure.
Sure.
This has been fun. It has actually been fun.
Like pizza or something.
It's like a Ron Burgundy question.
It's been fun.
I loved it.
Loved it. It was great.
Maybe.
I mean, if there's something you guys like have a group chat, like when Niko leaves, like, God, that Niko. I'm just kidding. But, no, this was a blast. And obviously, Najee and I, we do the show every week, but yeah, we think the world of Mike. So anytime you're here, my brother.
You guys, side profile.
Yeah.
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Yeah, we appreciate, first of all, we appreciate your friendship, but also we have that insight today. And got me thinking about a few things here too. So we appreciate that, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that is your KOMO Sports End Zone. For Najee and Mike, I'm Niko. We'll catch you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.